Welcome to our introduction to the 6 essential nutrients. The purpose of this video is to help us connect the dots between the concept of the 6 essential nutrients and MyPlate that we learned about last week. Remember, MyPlate uses the 5 food groups. So now let's think of this idea of the essential nutrients as the nutrients found within the food groups. Let's start with the macronutrients. Carbohydrates are one of the macronutrients. The 3 food groups where you find the most amount of carbohydrates are the fruits, vegetables, and grains food groups. Another macronutrient is proteins. This chart from our textbook highlights how all of the 5 food groups have foods within them that contain the macronutrient protein. Fats, or lipids, are our third category of macronutrients. A key takeaway about the fats macronutrient is understanding the difference between saturated and unsaturated fats. Stay tuned for more info to come on.
So let's go ahead and take a deeper dive into these macronutrients. Carbohydrates. Carbs are the most desirable form of energy for the body. They're found primarily in plant-based foods, grains, vegetables, fruits, like we just talked about, and they're also found in nuts and legumes. Foods with naturally occurring sugar tend to be more nutrient dense, like bananas naturally has sugar. There's also something called added sugars, which have more empty calories and fewer nutrients typically. When you're looking at food labels, pay attention to that added sugar section. We do want to make sure that we are avoiding added sugar as much as we can. Overall, added sugar should not exceed 100 calories or 6 teaspoons a day for women, and then added sugar should not exceed 150 calories a day or 9 teaspoons a day for men. You can think of carbohydrates in 2 categories, simple and complex. Simple carbohydrates are the ones that aren't as good for us. They're the ones found in soda and cereal. Complex carbohydrates are the ones we should try to be incorporating into our diet. These are good examples of complex carbohydrates. This graphic comes from our textbook, and it's a great way to highlight how if you're craving something like cornflakes, this would be a healthier way to fuel your body. If you're craving something salty and you want a snack rather than pretzels, what about popcorn? Fiber is an important part of carbohydrates. It's a non-digestible polysaccharide. Dietary fiber is the fiber that's naturally found in foods. Functional fiber is the fiber that's added to foods. And then when you put the dietary and functional fiber together, that's referred to as total fiber. Overall, just remember that fiber is a really important part of nutrition, and that when we're eating fibrous foods, especially if we're increasing our intake of fiber, make sure we're also increasing our intake of water. Overall, because of fiber's role of really kind of clearing out our digestive system, helping things move along the way they're supposed to, this is what makes it an anti-cancer agent. So how does this apply to the real world? We hear a lot about grains and whole wheat and refined grains, what kind of bread we should buy, and our textbook does a great job of breaking down why certain grains are more nutritious than others. So overall, grains have 3 edible parts: the bran, the endosperm, and the germ. When we eat refined grains, that's when the mill removes the bran and the germ. Enriched grains have folic acid, thiamine, niacin, riboflavin, and other minerals added to restore some of the lost nutrition from the refining. Whole grains contain all 3 parts: bran, germ, and endosperm. Some examples of whole grain foods: brown rice, oatmeal, whole wheat bread. These again are considered our complex carbohydrates.
That wraps up our talk of the carbohydrates for this week. Don't forget to check out our podcast This podcast is the same for weeks 4 and 5. It'll cover carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, all of the macronutrients. Your quiz questions for this week will come from this video and also the podcast specifically related to the carbohydrates chapter.